going to be looking at nested arrays. So we've got an array that we're going to create. It's going to have 3 arrays nested within it, outputting all of the values of the arrays. We're going to create some page elements and add those to the page. And then also how we can select the values of the nested items. So covering that in this lesson. As we saw in the previous lesson, when we create an array, we can also nest different data types within the array. And so that also includes arrays that can be nested within other arrays. So let's take a look at that, and we're going to create several different nested arrays and have a few different values contained within those. So this is creating 3 different arrays that are nested within a main array. So it's a main array object, and this holds all of that information together so that we can easily access it by using the index values. When we output the array into the console, we see that we've got the 3 items using the index value in order to return back those arrays. Then we can get the contents of the arrays that are contained within them. So let's select that and make a selection of the array. And then first we identify the array using the index value. And what that will do is that's going to return back the array values. So we've got the 1, 2, and 3. We can also create a for loop that will allow us to loop through the contents of the array. And so that's going to make it a little bit easier, so that way we can loop through and then we can check to see the different contents contained within the array. So as we're looping through, we loop through while I is less than the original parent array length. And then incrementing I by 1 will give us the index value of the item within the array. So this provides us an easy way to access all of the items contained within the array. And there's different ways to loop through arrays, which we're going to be covering in the upcoming lessons, as there are a lot of really useful methods to allow you to loop through arrays. So this is just one way that you can loop through the contents of an array. So what this is doing is it's producing and outputting into the console all the different items contained within the array, and each one of these is going to be its own array. So what we want to do as well is we want to loop through those values and select them, and then maybe even output them into the page. So let's go ahead and we'll do that, where we're going to be selecting each one of those arrays. And since we know that they are arrays, that they are constructed as arrays, we can select those items, and I'll give it a different value. I'll call it X. And we can loop through while the value of X is less than selecting the element item, or the item within the array, using that length, and we increment X. So that will actually give us the contents of that inner array. So we can output those values into the console, because we're going to be getting the index values of the inner array, and that's going to be using the index value of X. So in order to move one level in, we just use another set of square brackets. And what that will do is that will produce all of those values that are contained within the array. So right now within the console, we get all of the numbers being output as it's looping through the arrays and then looping through the contents of each array. And those are nested within each other, just like the arrays, allowing us to output those contents into the page. So let's go ahead and we're going to create some content on the page, and going to create a main container using the document create elements. And this is interacting with the web page, the DOM contents. So this will give us a container element that we have on the page. And then selecting the document body, we can append that main element onto the page. So now when we go into the HTML of the web page, under the elements, there's our main element that we created. We can also prepend it, so that will put it just before the JavaScript code. So that's our element, and now we can populate the contents of that element as we loop through. And the same way that we created the element, we can add that item into the element with whatever content we have. So create an element, and this can also be a div or a span, different types of elements that you can create. And instead of prepending it to the document body, we have the main object that we want to append it to. So I'm going to be just adding those elements to the main object. So just save that, and if we go into the HTML, that gives us a main div with 9 divs that are contained within it. And now let's output that content onto the page where we're going to be selecting and updating the value within the element. So update the text content, and this can be whatever value we have within the array. So that will allow us to add all of those items onto the page. And then of course you can apply some styling to those elements. So maybe we'll create a class. So using class list, add, and we'll create a class called box. And then within the main HTML, we'll take the style and select the elements, the class of box, and set a border. So set a slight border around it. Also set a width of 33%. So that will add all of those elements. And then also change the display to inline block. So that way we're stacking them. And then apply to all of the page the box sizing and set it to border box, so that we ignore the border and we just look at the inner widths. So that will give us the 3 elements across. And I'm also going to do a text align, and we'll center align the text content. So that gives us the contents of each array and then outputting it into the web page. So if we want to select the element content separately that we have within the array, in order to select, if we want to select the value of 5, we can use so just console log it first, and selecting the array, and then the index value of the inner item of the array. So it's using this as the value, so that returns back that array. And if we want to get the second item, we would use a value of 2 to represent the value, or it should be a value of 1 to represent the second item in the array. I'm also going to remove out the console log of the content, so that way we can see that we're returning back a value of 5 as we're looking to within the arrays, selecting the first element in the array with the index value of 1, and then that's returning back this full array, and then we're outputting the value of 5. So steps would be that we're selecting we've got the full array, which has the 3 items, and then we're selecting the item within that parent array with the index value of 1. So that's going to return back this second item in the array, 4, 5, 6. And then we're just outputting that into the console. And then we want to select the item with the index value of 5 and output that into the console. So that's how you can work with nested arrays and then make use of the values that are contained within those arrays. So go ahead and try it out and challenge yourself to select values that are contained within the array. And you can also use the document object in order to create a page element and then add them to the web page to see the contents of the array within the web page. And you can be ready to move on to the next lesson.